We acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians on the land on which we meet. We respect their continuing culture and contribution that they make to the life of this city and region, and we pay our respects to their elders, past and present. And I would also like to acknowledge any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who might be in this presentation. We are the Healthcare Consumers Association. We're a health promotion and health advocacy body here in the ACT, and we like to run these seminars for free online to help and support people understand the health system and all the support for their health conditions. So we're very glad that you're here tonight, and we really appreciate working with great organisations and businesses to provide you information that might help you with your conditions. So on that note, I will introduce you to Megan Layton. Megan is an accredited mental health social worker, the director of Simply Mindful Canberra, the Mindfulness Centre, and she'll be leading this session. She's experienced in mindfulness-based stress reduction. She's a teacher of mindfulness-based stress reduction, yoga and meditation, and mental health social worker as well. So many different titles and qualifications in there. I can't wait to hear about all the great calming and mindful things that we're going to talk about now. So I will pass you over to Megan to start tonight's topic.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Michelle and Darcy, for helping out. It's really wonderful to have people looking after all the tech stuff and stuff. Yeah, real luxury. So I hopefully can share my screen. No, it's disabled at the moment.
Just as we were talking about all the tech stuff.
It should be working now. Let me know.
Okay. Oh yeah.
There we go.
All right. It looks good.
The most important job.
Now you should be able to see a screen that says mindfulness and pain. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, we can see that at the moment.
Okay,
yep.
I'll just put it on play from the start. All right, so it should be big now.
Perfect. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, so we've already done an acknowledgement of country, but that's a beautiful photo taken by a young Indigenous man, actually, a local young man. So what we're going to cover this evening is just a little bit of information about what mindfulness is and how it works, just for anybody who's maybe not that familiar or would like a reminder. We'll look a little bit at how mindfulness interacts with the brain, the body, how stress and mental health. And then we'll spend a bit of time exploring mindfulness and pain and 3 skills that mindfulness offers that are really useful for working with pain. And then there'll be time to kind of explore and adapt practices. As we go through, I've got a couple of practices planned, so mindfulness practices, which means we're going to actually do the practice, because talking about it is of limited use unless we actually do it. So we're going to do it, gives you a chance to experience the practice and also start sort of playing with adaptations that might suit you. And then at the end, I'll talk a little bit about other things you might want to tap into, resources if you want to explore more mindfulness. So this quote up the top of this screen, "You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf," that really kind of captures what mindfulness can offer with regards to not just pain, but life in general. Being a human being is a very complex, challenging thing a lot of the time. So this is all about learning how to surf. A little bit about how the session will work. So everything we do, the mindfulness practices and the discussion and feedback, it's all voluntary. So please just take good care of yourself and do what feels right for you. Mindfulness is a bit different to many other things in life. There's no way of passing or failing or of being right or wrong. Instead, actually, it's really helpful to bring an attitude of curiosity and a kind of see for yourself attitude. So what happens when I do this, and how might I adapt this to suit me? As Michelle and Darcy have said, questions and feedback are really welcome. In fact, they're very helpful. The other thing is that we know mindfulness works. There's quite a lot of research that is sort of growing exponentially that really demonstrates that mindfulness can be incredibly helpful. And the other thing to know about mindfulness is it isn't always straightforward. It can be challenging, particularly when you pause and slow down, stuff can come up. So if that happens, there's nothing wrong with you. It doesn't mean mindfulness isn't suitable for you or that you're doing it wrong, actually. It just means that maybe you are becoming more aware, which is part of the process of mindfulness, of things that are here that need attention and that may need support. So just encourage you to get support if you need it. This is one of my favorite quotes from Albert Einstein. He said that curiosity is more important than knowledge. And in fact, I don't know objectively whether this is true, but he said about himself that he wasn't particularly intelligent. He was just extremely curious. So I find that encouraging, even if it's not that accurate. So just a tiny bit about me. I've already been introduced, but Simply Mindful runs a whole bunch of programs that may be of interest to you or somebody you know. This photograph here is a program that we ran in Glebe Park actually last summer or the summer before, I can't remember. 8 weeks leading up to Christmas, we ran free classes early in the morning in Glebe Park, and we were lucky it didn't rain for any of the classes, which was a small miracle. All right, so a little bit about mindfulness. Most of us understand it's not a very difficult concept to just be fully present and aware of what you're doing as you're doing it. And it's actually quite a difficult thing to do because we have minds that like to time travel and that spend a lot of time in the past and the future. So actually knowing what you're doing as you're doing it and being able to choose to stay present to whatever you choose, meaning that whatever is in front of you, whatever you're choosing to do now is the most important thing and you're giving it your full attention. So all of us, I'm sure, have experienced this, being somewhere wonderful or beautiful or being with someone we really care about and not being able to pay full attention to them because our mind wanders off or we're distracted by something, including pain. So really what we're learning to do when we practice mindfulness is to train ourselves to be present more of the time and to be able to choose where we place our attention. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. So mindfulness is sustained present moment awareness. Most of us can pay attention for some period of time. In fact, it's an innate human capacity. So you don't have to learn how to become mindful. You already know this. And yet most of us are kind of underdeveloped in this skill, or we've been untrained by life. And we get untrained by the world around us, but also by stressful or difficult experiences. If we go through periods of sustained stress, we can become a lot less mindful. And that's just a natural process. It's not our fault. It doesn't mean we're bad or anything like that. So just have a think about how long do you guess the average adult can pay attention for in the present moment?
I feel like my brain's goldfishy and I want to say like 5 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the year 2000, a research study with a few thousand North Americans was undertaken and they discovered 12 seconds was the average amount of time those adults could pay attention for. Then
it's not that far off then. I feel better now.
Yeah. Then they remeasured it in 2019, so 19 years later, and guess what had happened?
Did it definitely get smaller?
Yeah.
Sorry, someone put their hand up then and I butted in. My bad.
Oh, that was Jen. Yep, she said she's motioning small.
Oh, she's going smaller.
So yeah, it had reduced, and there's no, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why, if you think about all that's happened in that 20-year period. So particularly with technology and social media and stuff like that. So everything is clamoring for our attention. I read somewhere that the amount of information that I was exposed to when I was in year 7, so this is like 30 years ago, actually more than that, 35, is the same amount of information that a young person in year 7 today is exposed to in 1 week. So I got exposed to that in a whole year. They're exposed to it in 1 week. So no wonder we can't pay attention. We're just overwhelmed with stimulus and information. Not all of that is a bad thing, but actually we need a whole bunch of skills around how do we choose what to pay attention to, how do we train our attention so it's not just constantly being yanked away and actually controlled by things outside of us. So actually, I read that a goldfish can focus for 8 seconds or 9 seconds. So human beings are now doing worse than goldfish. So we're going to explore a little bit how to make what we're doing now, what we choose to engage with, the most important thing. And this attitude that's at the heart of mindfulness, which is one of non-judgmental, kind curiosity, is actually really one of the most pivotal parts of it. Whether you can pay attention for 10 seconds or 12 seconds or 5 seconds or 15 is less important than the attitude you bring to whatever is going on. The reason this is so important is that this moment that we're in right now, here, is actually the only moment we have. It's the only moment in which we can act, create, problem solve, influence, learn, change. If you think about it, we can't do any of those things in the past. It's already finished. And we can't do any of those things in the future. We can't even take a breath in the future. We can only breathe right now. So the more we can expand the amount of creativity, energy, our internal resources, like our problem-solving ability, our ability to connect, the more we can expand our ability to really bring that to the present moment, the more potential we have to influence whatever is here in a positive way and to make the most of it, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant or neutral, whether it's really ordinary or extraordinary. We can make the most of it and actually get whatever is available to us in this moment. So John Dewey, who I believe, my mum will know the answer to this question, was the author of the Dewey Decimal System, which is like a library cataloguing system. He is also one of the rock stars of education in the education world. His definition of learning was getting from this moment the kind of growth that is in it. So no matter what this moment is, if I can find the kind of growth that's in it and get that and actually allow it to help me grow and learn, that's education. All right, so let's try an actual practice. So I would invite you just to get comfortable wherever you are, as comfortable as possible. So if you're seated, you might like to adopt a comfortable position with your feet flat on the floor. See if there's any sort of obvious places of tension or holding that you might be able to soften or ease a little bit. Maybe you need to stretch a bit or twist or adjust. And you can keep your eyes open or close them. If they're open, just find something soothing or pleasant to look at. And just keep your eye gaze there if possible, so your eyes don't wander around and distract you. And then when you're ready, take a moment to just tune into what you can see. And actually, it's better to do this with your eyes open, but if your eyes are closed, you can notice light and dark on the back of the eyelids, shadows and movement. So there's still quite a bit of variation. And if your eyes are open, just noticing 5 things you can see, one at a time, no rush. So as soon as you notice something, and it may be a whole object, or it might be just a speck or a color or a line, a shadow, just acknowledge it and then let it go and notice the next thing that arises and draws your attention. So you're just moving gently from one thing you can see to the next. no rush. So we're moving into a kind of open receptivity to what's here. And rather than judging or evaluating what we're seeing, we're just noticing it. There's a colour, there's a speck, there's a shape. Then when you're ready, letting go of what you can see and shifting your attention to sounds. And you might like to close your eyes for this, just to help you focus fully on sounds. And the same thing, adopting this open receptivity to whatever arises and draws your attention. And one at a time, noticing 5 sounds you can hear. No rush. And there's no need to try and hear every single sound or register every single sound. It's also no problem if you keep coming back to the same sound. It's actually different each time. Then letting go of the focus on sounds and shifting your attention to sensations you can feel in the body. And again, just being curious and interested in whatever you notice, adopting this open receptivity. And if there are intense or distressing sensations, discomfort, pain, tension, we are often drawn to that first because it's dominating our experience. That's natural and that's okay. And then just getting curious about what else is here. Just open to other sensations also. And they may be very neutral, like simply the contact of my hand with my leg, temperature of the air on my skin. Noticing 5 sensations you can feel, one at a time. So you just notice a sensation, acknowledge it, let it go. Leave space for the next sensation to arise and draw your attention. And then letting go of the focus on sensations and tuning once more into what you can see, eyes open or closed. This time noticing 4 things you can see. And they can be the same as before or different. There's no need to really choose. Just whatever draws your attention. And noticing 4 sounds you can hear. You might also try noticing sounds that are not so dominant or in the foreground, but also in the background or very subtle, intermittent. And then shifting your attention to sensations in the body, again adopting this open receptivity, noticing 4 sensations you can feel. And whether they're pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, it's all okay. They're just sensations. Then when you're ready, shifting your attention to what you can see, noticing this time 3 things you can see. 3 sounds you can hear. Being really curious, not thinking that you know what's here. Listening as if for the first time. And then bringing that same fresh curiosity to the body. 3 sensations you can feel. What's here now? And then shifting your attention to 2 things you can see. 2 things you can hear. 2 sensations you can feel. And now we'll turn to 1 thing we can see, but this time choosing. So rather than adopting an open receptivity, out of all the things you can see right now, choosing to focus on 1 that you find most soothing or somehow pleasant or good. Giving it your full attention. If there are lots of pleasant or good things, just choose 1 to begin with, giving it your full attention and seeing if you can drink it in with your eyes. So really noticing the detail of it, if possible, whatever it is that attracts you to it. And just like drinking a glass of water when you're really thirsty, knowing that it's nurturing you, helping you in some way, drink this in with your eyes, letting it in, letting it land. 1 or 2 more deep, slow breaths, taking it in. And then doing a similar thing with sounds if possible. So out of all the sounds you can hear right now, choosing to focus on the one you find most soothing, comforting, pleasant. Even if it's fleeting or very background or subtle. And taking it in as best you can. And then shifting your attention to sensations in the body. And out of all the sensations you can feel in the body right now, letting your attention rest on a place or a part of the body that feels most comfortable, pleasant, or somehow good. So this may be a part of the body that you don't pay much attention to because it doesn't hurt. So maybe, for example, the tip of the nose, or part of your body that's supported by the chair or cushions. Or maybe it's the sensations of a warm blanket on your skin, sensations of breathing. So no matter how dominant or loud unpleasant is, see if you can find the most pleasant or soothing, somehow okay, good place in the body. Let your attention rest here and drink it in, take it in. For 1 or 2 more deep, slow breaths. And then letting that go. And as you let that go, inviting you to check in and just notice how you're going, whether you feel any different or not, any better, worse, the same. And I'll just pop up on the screen a little 0 to 10 scale. So just check in around where are you now on that scale, and where were you just before we started that practice? Has there been a shift or not? And this is just for your information. There's no right or wrong, no pass or fail. All right, so I'll just go back to what we were doing in that practice. Tuned into 5 things we could see, then hear, then feel. So we had a really kind of broad focus and an open, receptive focus to whatever is here. This is really important because part of what we're training when we practice mindfulness, in fact, the most important thing we're training to begin with, is our attention. Because if you think about it, wherever your attention goes, everything else goes with it. Your time, your energy, your resources, things like money, go with it. And whatever your attention is drawn to will dominate. And because we have an inbuilt negative bias, which means that our nervous systems are always scanning for what's negative in the environment because they need to pick up on potential threats. So the nervous system, I called it they, but the nervous system is the brain, the spinal cord, and all of our nerves. And the nervous system's job is survival. It's not inner peace. So the nervous system is always on the lookout for, is this a threat? And it's monitoring constantly, internally, am I okay internally? Externally, is this external environment okay? So when we walk into a new environment, we're checking it out to see if it's okay. And it's also monitoring in between, the relationship between me and this environment. Am I okay in this place? Are these people friendly or not? Am I safe here or not? So the nervous system is very sensitive and picks up on the most subtle cues, often below the level of conscious awareness. And if something is picked up as a potential negative, it's registered as a threat, even though it may not actually be a threat. Like me being slightly hungry right now, for example, is not actually a threat to my life. Even if I had to wait a day or two, I'd be fine. But that discomfort or hunger can register as a threat in the nervous system and make me kind of agitated and make me move into reactivity, unless I can bring awareness to it and soothe it. So we've already talked about why mindfulness is so important, but one of the research articles I came across said that the average adult spends 50 to 70% of their time in their heads in the past or the future, and only 30 to maybe 50% in the present. So if we can increase the amount of time we're in the present moment by even 10%, we've actually got 10% more resources to bring to whatever is here. Even if it's quite an ordinary moment, we might actually be able to make more of it. And if we can do that, it will resource us more fully for challenging moments. Okay, so let's move. I think I skipped over a slide then. Having a bit of trouble with this one. Yeah, there we go. So let's actually tune into, we're going to start talking about attention and pain and suffering and the difference between the two. So one simple and quite useful way of understanding the difference between pain and suffering is that pain is the stuff that life throws at us that is inevitable. It's part of the human experience. None of us get to avoid it, no matter who we are. And it comes in all different kind of flavors and shapes and sizes for each person. But pain is inevitable. Suffering is the stuff we pile on top of the pain that is actually optional and we have choice over. It's just that sometimes we don't realize we have choice. So pain is outside of our control, part of the human condition. Suffering is our reaction to the pain. Now, this is not to say that we are bad in some way if we find ourselves caught up in suffering. because suffering is things like when I experience some kind of pain, then I start to anticipate circumstances under which that might come up again, and I get anxious about them. That anxiety is suffering, and it's actually optional, but it's also a natural reaction to pain. So there's no blame or judgment here. It's just acknowledging that that is where we can start to exercise some influence if we can learn how. So with mindfulness, what happens over time is we start to become more and more aware of both the patterns that we have, the ways we react to and relate to our pain or our difficulties, our whatever it is that life is throwing at us. And we also become more aware of some of the choices and the spaces in which we can make different choices around how we interact with this. So it's really about our relationship to it. And that quote there on the next to the cactus, you may not be able to do anything about the pain you experience, but you can change your relationship to it. So this is part of the space that opens up when we start to explore mindfulness. And for everyone, it'll be a little bit different. I just want to share a tiny bit of Vidyamala Birch's story because she's a very well-known sort of teacher in this space and a person who's lived with chronic debilitating pain herself. So, it has teeth, her experience. I won't go into much detail about what happened to her, but she ended up with a very debilitating condition after a series of injuries and accidents at a very young age. Ended up in hospital in the intensive care ward. And she had one of those experiences of a sort of a long night where she had to stay in an upright position because of tests she'd had that day, but she had terrible back pain and usually had to rest in a lying down position. She couldn't actually sit because of the pain. So she had to find a way to get through that night without going mad. And she said she felt like she was literally going mad. And that experience will be familiar to some of you, maybe all of you. So what she realized as she ended up in this internal battle was that she didn't have to get through the night until morning. She just had to get through one moment. And that was a kind of a huge insight for her. All I have to do is get through this moment. And then this moment when it arrives. So letting go of the past and letting go of the future and just being with what's here now. Actually, all of us can be present to what is here right now if we keep it contained to this moment. She said also that she learned that in the experience herself, there was a lot of understanding about pain and distress that were caused by her reactions and fears, along with a knowledge that she could actually be free of the reactions and fears. So she started working with physical pain practice, which is a common part of what is taught in all mindfulness that I'm aware of, which is to learn how to approach rather than avoid pain. Our nervous systems, which are here to protect us, pick up on pain and immediately move into avoidance. It's not our fault that we do that. But actually, this counterintuitive movement towards pain and into it in order to get to know it and actually to realize that it's not such a solid thing. It is broken up into moments. It is always changing. And there's a lot of variation in it. And actually, there's space in it to bring something else. So this is called the approach orientation, which is something that's at the heart of mindfulness. So we try to start approaching rather than avoiding our present moment experience, no matter what it is, whether it's a physical challenge, an emotional challenge, an intellectual thing. It could be anything, with gentle curiosity. And we move towards it with this kind of gentle inquisitiveness. The kind, gentle inquisitiveness is actually really important. This is not a practice where we use force or pressure. As soon as we start to pressure ourselves, it turns into something that's stressful. and actually sort of reinforces the pain and makes it harder and develops more contraction around it, rather than making it a little easier for us to loosen up around it. And we just experience whatever it is as moment-to-moment changing sensations. So we're going to do that in a few moments. I just wanted to share a little bit more about attention first. So using the approach orientation is the first of the kind of 3 core skills around working with pain. The second is playing with how we pay attention. So we can change how we pay attention. We're naturally drawn by intense, difficult, or distressing experience, which registers as pain. We're naturally drawn to the dominant, most unpleasant part of it, and that's our nervous system doing its job. But actually, there are lots of other things around it that we could pay attention to as well. So in that little practice we did at the beginning, you might have noticed that your attention is drawn initially to something that's dominant in your experience, and then you can start getting curious about what else is here, and you might find increasingly more subtle and things that are present. And actually, even very neutral things can become quite interesting and even pleasant. And if we do this with pain, and I say this with a kind of gentleness and caution, but actually even pain can be experienced as neutral or even pleasant if we can bring our attention to it in a particular way. And this is a very individual kind of experiment, and we need to play with it quite a bit until we can work out how to do that. So what we're doing here with attention is learning to both narrow it down. So I can narrow my attention down right now, as we did in that initial practice, to one pleasant thing. And as I do that, what I'm doing is basically moving everything else in experience into the background of awareness, and I'm bringing this one pleasant thing into the foreground. It doesn't get rid of all those other things necessarily, but it means that my experience is filled with this one pleasant thing. I can also do the opposite. So if something really unpleasant is dominating my experience and right there in the spotlight, I can do the opposite. I can broaden out and ask what else is here, and take in more of the environment or more of my experience. And that can be very helpful when we're getting hijacked by one thing. So we can do this broad or narrow or anything in between. We can also tune into what's pleasant here, what's unpleasant here, what's neutral. How am I reacting to this? So this starts to open up space. This training our attention in this way starts to open up space for us to choose how to respond rather than react. So some research that was conducted with Vidyamala Birch's program, she has a program called Breathworks that she started a good 20 years ago or so now, where people were sort of learning specifically how to use mindfulness with pain. Respondents said things like, I learned more self-awareness, how to respond rather than react. I learned to take responsibility for myself, and they explained that as not blaming others, but taking full responsibility, not expecting medical professionals or anyone else in my life to do that for me. And they also learned things like pacing, how to create space and pacing, and also how to relax, how to let go. So skills like learning to breathe into pain, learning to create space around pain, learning to move into it, when to move away from it, how to sort of start to play with your relationship to it, they all came into play. Well, let's move into another practice so that we can keep sort of experiencing this. I just want to explain one more thing about neuroplasticity, which neuroplasticity is the science of how the brain learns and changes. And the negative bias is one of the most influential trainers of the brain. So when we have a negative experience or something we interpret as negative, basically anything that is in awareness at the time of that negative experience gets associated with it and kind of stored, not stored accurately in memory, but it is associated with it over time, which means that whenever those things get triggered again, the same experience gets triggered. So whenever for example, if I had a bad experience with a magpie, which, might happen soon, but if I have a bad experience with a magpie, anything else that's in awareness at that time, like the weather, the trees that I was near, the time of year that it is, the blossoms, all that kind of thing, those things kind of basically get activated as associations. And then next time I see something like that or experience something like that, that memory gets triggered easily. And I go into some kind of anxious anticipation of that repeating itself. So this is how the brain learns. It's very clever at doing that, and it gets better at what it repeatedly does. So what we're trying to do is use this dynamic with mindfulness. Mindfulness is a form of mental training, actually, but we're trying to do this with our whole body, our whole emotional, sensory system, as well as our mind. And we're trying to train ourselves to pay attention, to start to notice how we pay attention, and to start to choose what we pay attention to and how we do that. The way we do this is by step out of our neural sheep tracks, is to pause, bring an attitude of open, kind curiosity. And that's the thing that starts to help us move into approaching rather than avoiding. It helps us to see what's actually going on, and then we can choose what to give attention to. All right, so let's move into another practice. So this one is focused on body sensations, and you can do as much or as little as this as you like, depending on how you're going this evening. I'll give you lots of options to play with and just invite you to explore what might be possible for you. So nothing's compulsory. You can let go of this practice at any time and do whatever suits you. So I'm going to invite you to settle again into the most comfortable position you can. And just tune into your whole body, sitting or lying here breathing. Notice the contact of your body with the surfaces beneath you. See if you can actually feel that contact. So you're not so much thinking about it as feeling it. Noticing how your weight is distributed. And whether the surfaces are smooth or bumpy, warm or cool, hard or soft. Just have a go, if it's okay for you, at distributing your weight a little more evenly between the right and left sides, so that you're not leaning to one side or the other. You're not leaning forward or back. You have a kind of dignified, upright, balanced position. And then, if it's okay for you, letting your attention rest on the breath, noticing the natural breath, noticing the in-breath coming in as it's happening, the out-breath going out as it's happening. And you're not so much thinking about the breath as feeling it, sensing it. Noticing as you breathe in how the body lifts, expands and fills. And as you breathe out, how the body just settles, releases, lets go a little. If it helps, you might like to place a hand on the belly and just feel the belly rising on the in-breath and falling on the out-breath. See if you can just allow yourself to be fully present with each breath, unfolding as it's happening. Right now, there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to be. You're choosing to be here now. This is the most important place. And then, knowing that you can return to the breath anytime or keep your attention here if you prefer, inviting you to let your attention move down through the body into the feet and tuning in to sensations in the feet as best you can. You might notice, for example, the contact of the feet with the floor, contact of the feet with clothing, socks, shoes. You might notice temperature, warmth, coolness. So see if you can bring an open, kind curiosity, this non-judgmental attitude that's at the heart of mindfulness, to whatever is here now. Not thinking that you know what's here, but instead being open to sensations in this moment, because they're always changing, moment to moment. And you might notice buzzing, tingling, pulsing. And you might like to see if you can notice each toe in turn. See whether you can feel each toe or not. Remembering there's no right or wrong way to be experiencing this. Your experience right now is simply your experience in this moment. And in the next moment, it'll be different. Then when you're ready, if you'd like to, moving your attention up from the feet, slowly through the ankles, into the lower legs. And as you do this, if intense or distressing sensation or emotion arises, there are a few ways you can try working with it. So just inviting you to play with it a little bit in your own way. So you might like to tune in with a more kind of fine, precise, detailed attentiveness to where exactly do I feel this distressing or uncomfortable sensation? Where is it? And see if you can approach it, go into it. Notice exactly where it is. Whether it's deep inside this part of the body, close to the surface, whether it's moving and changing rapidly or slowly, whether it's really concentrated in one spot or spread out. And what's it actually like? What are its qualities? Is it heavy, light, hot, cold? So there's no need to evaluate it or explain it. You're simply feeling into it with curiosity. And you can stay with that for as long as you like if you're finding it useful. If it becomes too intense or overwhelming at any point, that's okay. Just inviting you then to take your attention elsewhere in the body and take it to somewhere that feels pleasant or neutral. So finding that place maybe that you connected with earlier this evening, letting your attention rest here in this pleasant or neutral place. And just stay here for as long as you need to, settling yourself down again, calming, regulating. And then, when you feel ready, can let your attention gently move back with curiosity to this place of intensity and just check in with it briefly for as long as you like. And just be curious about, is it the same or has anything changed? What's here now? Stay with it for as long as is okay for you, and then move your attention away again to this neutral or pleasant place. And in this way, you're moving your attention back and forth. And you're in control of that. So you start to learn and trust that you can regulate or moderate your exposure. And that if it starts to become too much, you can move away. Another way of working with intense or distressing sensation or emotion is to breathe into it. And it may be sensation or emotion or a kind of tangle of both, because often what happens when we experience unpleasant sensation is emotion follows soon after, distress of some kind. So just allow yourself to breathe in deeply. And as you breathe in deeply, directing the breath into this place of the body. So you're using your mind's eye to direct it into this place, letting it move in and around and through, soothing and supporting. A bit like a feather, just gently, softly, soothing this place. And as you breathe out, with each long, slow out breath, you're letting go bit by bit of any contraction, any holding, any tension, which comes up naturally when we experience something that's distressing or uncomfortable. So continue breathing in. You may even want to breathe in, imagining the breath in a soothing, somehow healing or pleasant colour. Especially if you're a very visual person, that can be helpful. Another way of working with intense or distressing sensation is to allow it actually to have more space. So instead of trying to stop it and contracting around it, is you just let it reverberate throughout the body wherever it needs to go, even outside the body. So you stop trying to contain it and you set it free. Give it a bigger space. It's a bit like diluting salt in a bigger bucket of water. Instead of in a cup of water, we're diluting it in a bucket. Makes it easier to bear. So we'll just briefly move a little further up into the body. So from the lower legs, moving up into the knee region. You can also just stay with a part of the body that you want to work with or be with. Tuning in and around the knees, noticing sensations here as they are in this moment. And then continuing to move your attention from the knees up into the upper legs. Noticing what's here. And if you'd like to, inviting you to broaden your attention from the upper legs to include the whole of both legs and feet. Noticing sensations in the whole of both legs and feet as best you can. And then broadening even further to the whole body. So you're opening up to the whole body. The feet, legs, pelvis, the back, belly, chest, arms, hands, neck, face and head. The whole body. Noticing firstly what draws your attention in the whole body, if anything. And then inviting you just to play a little with, is this a good place for me to rest my attention right now? And how do you want to rest your attention here? You want to simply notice sensations arising in this place in the body. You want to work with them in a particular way, becoming really curious, narrowing your focus, or moving back and forth between this place and a more neutral or pleasant place in the body. You want to try breathing into this place. Or do you want to try broadening, expanding, giving this more space? So bringing that to a close in your own way in the next few moments, and then letting your attention come back to rest with the breath, if that's okay for you. And seeing if you can find an anchor in the body for the breath. So an anchor is often the place in the body where you feel the sensations of breathing most strongly. Maybe the nose or nostrils, the throat, maybe the chest, maybe the belly. Or it may be the whole journey of the breath. Nose, throat, chest, belly. And back out, belly, chest, throat, nose. If the belly is tricky or the breath is tricky to pay attention to, you can try just resting one hand gently in the other, just allowing that contact, the support of one hand for the other, and all that sensory feedback you get. Let that be your focus instead. And we'll take a few more deep, slow breaths here. And then gently letting that go, wriggling fingers and toes. And as you come back, again inviting you to check in and just noticing whether you feel any different or not. And also being curious about, was there anything of benefit, anything interesting to you from that practice that you might like to carry forward with you, that might benefit you? All right, so coming back, I'm just going to share a little bit of information now about mindfulness and where you might get some more mindfulness information or resources if you would like that. And then open up for questions and feedback, because often that's one of the most interesting parts of a session like this. So just showing our website really so that you can find it. So it's simply mindful.com.au. If you would like to, we're happy to offer just a 20% off for any program. We've got a whole bunch of programs starting up soon for anyone who's attended this seminar. So that's the little voucher code here. We've got one evening, just a short introduction to self-compassion program coming up soon. And then we have a 6-week self-compassion course starting after that. And self-compassion really is one of the key things to bring to any experience of difficulty, whether it's pain, so the difficulties that life throws at us that we don't have so much control over, or whether it's our own suffering, our own reactivity to that, which is also part of the human experience. So when we learn to bring self-compassion, this attitude of kindness, and really develop that, it can make an enormous difference to how we experience something. It can also connect us more fully with other people and with the world around us in a very kind of profound way that can be very relieving. In fact, Vidyamala Birch also speaks about that in a very compelling way. I might just try and find that little quote that she's got about that, which I highlighted. She says, if I remember that the experience of pain only exists in this moment, then it has quite a different quality to when I get caught up in overwhelm, or I get anxious or depressed about it. My fears for the future, sorrows about the past, my grief for what I've lost. Then my experience is one of tightness and restriction. But if I tune into my experience of pain only in this moment, then I can remember that the present moment is vast, multidimensional, and I can start to experience it fully. So she gives an example which might make this a little more real. Say I'm sitting with a friend in the sun. Yes, there is physical discomfort, but there is also the pleasure of being with a friend, the sensation of the sun, an awareness of the environment, feelings of love. It's interesting to see this. I think we often become miserable because we have an unwillingness to engage wholeheartedly with life as it's happening now and experience its freedom and abundance, no matter what our immediate circumstances. The possibility of there being a spacious, beautiful quality to life is present in all circumstances for anybody. I am sure of this. Another way of using personal suffering positively is to see it as a moment of empathy with others who are also suffering. And for me, this is the most tender and fascinating aspect of living with pain, and it goes to the heart of our shared humanity. So it's probably enough of that. It's just, I guess, a way of planting a seed if that kind of thing interests you. It might be something you want to pursue, and I'm happy to send Vidyamala's story and her articles to anyone who might want to pursue that further. All right, let me open this up for questions. So there's an invitation. There's no such thing as a bad question or a silly question. And also feedback is really welcome. Any kind of feedback at all. I'm very difficult to offend, and I like to learn from people and also to engage with what's real for you.
Does anybody want to throw their hand up or post something in the chat?
And I should stop sharing the screen, hey?
Yeah, you could do that, and then we could see a bit more of people's faces. I can start. I have a question.
Yeah.
I guess my mind goes to being a parent and when is a good time to start I mean, there's probably never a great time to start teaching mindfulness, because maybe you should do it all the time anyway. But like, how does this, sort of practice, and how can you work this in with kids? And is there ways to adapt it so it's a bit less adulty and a bit more kiddie? How do you do that?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Such a beautiful question. And did I see a little person there before? I thought it
Yes.
briefly. Yeah.
They keep sneaking in. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Look, children are actually the best mindfulness teachers ever because they are more present than adults more of the time, especially
Yeah.
little people. So 2-year-olds are always in the present moment. They actually don't know how to be in the future or the past. They're only here now. So we all need to learn from them. And that is like, I can remember well the frustrations of trying to get somewhere on time. And the little 2 or 3-year-old stopping and finding an ant or a rock or some fascinating leaf and taking forever to walk, I don't know, 150 meters. And I think we were late to school every day, more often than not, for a very long time, because of this quality of, oh, that's so interesting, that's so beautiful, the complete fascination with minute details. So when possible, if you can let yourself relax into engaging with that, that is such a gift. And it's not always possible. But the other tip is to reduce multitasking when possible. And that's also a big challenge for parents because time is so short. But if you can reduce multitasking, that means your attention isn't split as much. And you're able to, I don't know, just get dinner ready if that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
Or tend to the tantrum when the tantrum's happening instead of trying to get on with that bit of your work you were trying to do. Or, just allow yourself to be fully present to whatever is here. And that kind of modeling, children learn by osmosis,
They do, yeah.
what we do, not by what we say. So you don't have to talk about it, you just do it. And you try and learn from them as much as possible too, and recognize those moments when they're teaching you. It helps to be a little humble in those moments. And of course, you're going to feel, like we all do, moments of frustration, irritation.
Impatient. I'm very impatient.
Yeah.
I don't know when that developed, but yes, I don't tend to have a lot of patience for the mindfulness of my 2-year-old. That's true.
Yeah. But even if you can just do it a little bit, like, I don't know, 15 minutes a day, just be fully present to whatever it is that's captured their attention. You might actually find that you start to enjoy it. And having little kids is actually also an opportunity to, and you will have discovered this, no doubt, to actually relearn how to play. Like we forget.
Yeah, you do. You grow out of the habit. Yeah.
Yeah, and to play, you have to be present.
Yeah, that's true.
And play also connects you. So with yourself and your childlike parts, but also with whoever's playing with you. So there's a lot
That's a fun way to do it. Yeah, I like that. We've got a comment. It's probably not really a question, but it's probably a good discussion point. Focusing on my breath did reduce the painful sensations in my hands. So that's an idea, working around that breath. It makes me think about when I went to a class once about pain, and it was like, how long can you hold the ice cube on your hand before you have to take it away because it gets too painful? So we all did it, and it was like, I don't know, a few seconds or whatever. And then if you really focused on your breathing, you could hold it on there for like 4 times longer. So that kind of reminds me of that whole idea that the breathing is a really important part of managing stressful situations and pain. So that's a good comment.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Liz. And that demonstrates the playing with how you pay attention. So tuning into your breath might reduce the painful sensations in a part of your body. And really quite remarkably, it's quite a big insight for a lot of people. It also, that opposite thing that I was trying to explain in the body scan or just give some guidance around which is so counterintuitive, but also can be life-changing, is what's it like to just take your time to settle and relax, and then as much as you're able to, and then actually tune into the pain, particularly if it's very dominant and it's almost impossible to do anything else. You may as well go with it and see if you can become curious about it. And it feels to me like that's a big ask, and it requires actually quite a bit of courage. But as soon as you do it, you discover all kinds of really interesting ways of working with your own experience that can be so empowering. So I just encourage people to start literally dipping your toe into that little bit by little bit, because you have to do it in a way that doesn't overwhelm you, and that where you feel like you've got some control over how much you're exposed to and how you play with it. But the more you do that, the more you start to learn different ways of working with the pain.
That is a very good point. Another question, was there any in the chat? Let me have a quick look. No, nothing from that. One of the ones we had from the registrations, which I thought was a really great question, is when you've fully shifted into the flight or fight mode, like when you've gone past it, you've gone too far, and you know, you're obviously not sitting down and gently preparing yourself to do mindfulness. Are there any small things you can do in those moments when everything's racing and you're redlining it? How do you bring yourself back?
Really.
That was into a state of mind where you can actually think rationally enough to choose to do a mindfulness activity then. Like, yes, I thought that's very applicable. I can I can definitely feel that question.
Yeah, so it is a very good question, and it is actually unrealistic to expect ourselves to sit still and breathe calmly when we're in, full on fight flight, when we've got adrenaline and cortisol and other stress hormones running through our system, because they're gearing us up to meet the challenge. And there's a perceived threat here. There's, something that my nervous system has interpreted as a perceived life threat. So I'm not going to sit still and be calm.
No, not at all.
So one of the best things to do is, if possible, is just a short period of intense exercise, because your body is geared up to fight the threat.
To do that thing, yeah.
You've got a lot of energy in your system then. So it can be, say, high knees on the spot. Depends on your mobility and things like that, but it doesn't usually have to be very much exercise, like a minute or two until you're puffed, and then you can settle down. Another alternative to that is intense tensing and releasing. It does the same thing. So you can do that by finding something with lots of resistance. So for some people right now, for example, you can press through the soles of your feet into the floor, and as if you're trying to push the floor away as hard as you can for as long as you can without causing an injury. If you've got difficulties with your feet and that's not okay to do, you can press your hands together like this, so nice strong kind of resistance, or you can press your upper arms back into the chair. Can't really see that I'm doing that, but I'm pressing my upper arms into the chair behind me. So anything that means you're actually tensing up a whole bunch of muscles, screw up your face and neck, like you can get everything going. Just until you can't handle it anymore, and that's usually 30 seconds or something like that, and then you let go in the most controlled, graduated way possible. Just do that 2 or 3 times, and usually by the end of that, similarly with the intense exercise, your nervous system has basically switched gear. And
you're like short-circuiting it. Yeah, I like that idea. Yeah, that's a really good tip, actually. I like that one. Anybody else? Any questions about stress or pain or mindfulness? How to apply these things we've learnt tonight in our lives? Last chance. Okay, everyone's a little bit shy tonight. That's okay. All right, well, we will start with our little wrap-up spiel. Firstly, I want to say a massive thank you. Obviously, that was wonderful. I really enjoyed that. I liked I think I sort of got I was a bit better and a bit more focused in the first one where we were doing, because it was like switching faster. Like I needed to do better in that one than the body scan. But I think that's given me some really good food for thought around how I can switch off and focus in. And that just felt really nice. And you have a very soothing voice. So because I had my headphones on and my eyes closed, it was like you're in my brain. And I really enjoyed that. It was like, such a nice person talking to me. Like, I can imagine that would be part of the way you'd run your practice. So that's a good skill to have when you're doing mindfulness and guided meditations and yoga and things like that, to have that really nice calming voice. So I really appreciated that, and I'm sure everybody else here did tonight as well. And so thank you very much for all that wonderful information and some of those little skills. As Megan was saying, there was an option to join the mailing list and find out about some more of the courses and things, or you can just pop onto the website. I think we posted it in just before, but if anybody missed out on that opportunity and they did want to join up to the mailing list, you can just put a hand up in the chat or just say happy to be added, and I'll pass on those details. Obviously, with all these sorts of things, we encourage people to check with their own health practitioners before starting anything new. You know, if you're to do your due diligence and check all your things before you go sort of starting off and delving too deep into things. But yeah, I think this was a nice calming sort of way to just have a little venture into what mindfulness and things could be. So definitely ask questions and see if it's right for you. We like to post a little evaluation link on these talks. We do one per month. The first Thursday of every month, we do a topic similar. So the next one coming up is called Looking After Your Feet. But so every time we, very relevant to this, but every time we do one, we like to put out an evaluation and learn anything from how you thought the webinar was, anything we could do better, anything you really appreciated. And that helps us to know what topics and what formats and things really work for people. So if you do have a second to do our survey, that would be really helpful. And if you want to find out more about these presentations, you can sign up for the next one or have a look on our website for what other topics we offer. I think we've got Looking After Your Feet for the next month, and then that must be October, and then dental health and chronic conditions is November. So 2 fun topics yet to come. Yes, I think that's mostly everything that I needed to say. So we've got a few minutes left. I can give you back 7 minutes almost, but any last bits of information, anything from you, Darcy, or anything from you, Megan, that you wanted to add, or are we happy to wrap? Was there any last comments or anything people wanted to say or do before we head off?
Nothing from me, but thank you, Megan. That was really great.
Oh, I'm glad. Thanks, Darcy. And thank you, Michelle.
Yeah,
If
no worries.
Want any of the articles or anything, I'm happy to send them. Just get in touch with us.
Yes. So in the coming days, I will, possibly even tomorrow morning, I'll see how I go, I will send out an email to everybody with the links and resources from tonight. Hopefully a link to the recording so you can watch it again if you wanted to go through those practices again. And any other information and bits and bobs I will put in the email as well, so you don't have to try and frantically scribble everything down. But yeah, I'll do that either tomorrow or early next week. So look out for that in your inboxes. And other than that, thank you to everyone for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed it. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Start doing my...
Thank you.
Good night.
All right.